Hello, my name is Mike Prom, Applications Engineer for Applied Engineering. I'm going to start off the Inventor 2011 What's New with an Ease of Use session. Starting in Inventor, I'm going to start off a new sketch, and right away you're going to notice in this new sketch is this new heads-up display in Inventor. Now this is functionality that's common from AutoCAD, and they've brought that now over into Inventor, which allows me to put in my dimensions, angles, as I'm going through the sketching process. Also, if I right click and hit select close, it's going to close off that sketch for me. Again, functionality that was available in AutoCAD, which is now being brought over into Inventor, which is going to allow the users that transition from AutoCAD to have a more familiar face when they're sketching. Also, you're going to notice here in my dimension as I went through this design, I'm going to reuse geometry, also functionality inside of the dimension tool to allow me to multiply and divide numbers so I don't have to do those calculations by hand. I have the computer, I might as well let it do it for me. Also you're going to be noticing that I'm going to be using lines and constraints to reduce the amount of dimensions needed to constrain this sketch. This is more of just a personal practice. I like to use the fewest dimensions as possible, allowing for easier use and more of a top-down design, having dimensions change multiple different sections of my components. Now, new for 2011 is this capability of these glyphs that appear when I select a line in the sketch, allowing me to edit that current sketch, add a new extrusion to this. Now, also in this extrusion, you're going to notice I have the capability of changing my draft angle here as well. Just by dragging it, I can type in numbers, but I also have these new arrows which allow me to pull and push to the dimension I'd like it to be at. Also, you're going to notice is the new functionality that all my options that are normal to my extrude box are right around my mouse, making my design process even quicker. Now, I'm going to add a new sketch on that plane that went right through my part, and in order to see the actual sketches, I can hit my F7 button, which allows me to slice that part so I can actually see my dimensions. Again, with the heads-up display, allowing me to select my dimensions. Now, when I'm doing something like a rectangle here, I can simply just hit my tab, which jumps to the next dimension, and hit return, and I have added my dimensions while I'm doing my sketch of my rectangles. Again, use of constraints to just fully define the sketch. I'm also going to be adding two sketches in one here, and we're going to see how we can just turn on the visibility so that I'm not having to do two separate sketches. I can just reuse a sketch twice. So the first step here again is select that line. The new glyphs appear, which allow me to choose which options are available to me. Now again, options such as my axis, which are right around my mouse, and then the arrow, which allows me to drag my rotation, or I can select a full rotation. Now again, I was saying I can reuse that sketch, so I simply just go up into my model tree, turn back on that visibility, and I can continue on with my design. Again, by selecting a line, you're going to see those new glyphs appear. These are different options that are common based off that sketch. Simply just selecting my axis, and with that green check mark, that allows me to close out of that box. Now when I select a surface, you can see glyphs appear again, which allow me to make changes, add a new sketch. In this case, I just would like to make a change. Again, going to that design with dimensions built off each other, notice how that properly keeps it centered because I had one dimension based off another one. Now I'd like to continue on with more sketching, but before I do, let's take a look at where that heads-up display is. Now in my Tools application option, under sketching, you can see there's a heads-up display. You can turn off and on that by selecting the box. We can see what my options are available to me, and by hitting OK or apply, it's going to apply those new rules. Again, selecting a surface, I can create a new sketch, and in this case I'm simply just going to come in and make a little cutout. Right clicking again will allow me to close off that sketch and use my constraints here to just make everything parallel. Now what I'm going to be doing is adding some dimensions, but when I'm adding to my dimensions, I'm going to type in a name such as offset, and then as long as you hit equals and then number, it can be any name. The reason why this is nice is because that can be used later when you're doing something like an eye part, eye assembly, anything like that. You're going to notice here as I'm adding these dimensions, I can actually just type in the word offset. I can select the other dimension, or I can type in the word offset and use something as, let's say, times by 2, again letting the computer do the calculations for me. Now this time when I select my line, I'm going to do a cut, and I can simply just drag the arrow in the cut direction, and the computer understands that that's going to be a cut, not an extrusion. Again, that's based off the dimensions. Now, if I click on my parameters, you can see here, this is where it comes up as offset. As you're going through your design process, it's good practice if you know you're going to be doing something like iLogic tools, where you'd want to change the length or the height, to go in and type in words, because then you know what those dimensions are when you're going to try to reuse them later. Continuing on this design, I'm just going to finish off here with a rib. Nothing new, but just good practice here of reusing dimensions that are available to me in the model. So I select both sides of it and figure out the dimension for me. Again, reducing the amount of calculations I have to do, letting the computer do the work for me. Now, I'd like to continue on with my design of this A-arm here, and I can simply just create a sketch to make my center point. You can see there's a hole tool available to me now. If you're not using the hole tool, this is a great tool that allows you to come in, select dimensions, to do my extrusions. Also, you notice on the front here, when I use my hole tool, it's going to allow me to actually select the threads, and you can see all the different standards. So if you know that this is going to be something that's threaded, let the computer again do the work, calculate what size hole it should be. I can specify how far I want the threads to be inside of there, and continue on with my design. Now, usually when I finish off design, I like to do something like add in some fillets. Notice that, again, using that arrow tool allows me to create these fillets. I love this feature because it's very hard normally to preview the fillet. You're kind of trying to get a shape to it, but by grabbing and dragging and then finishing off with typing in the numbers, it's a great way to get a preview of what these fillets are going to be. Also, you're going to notice here I can actually select multiple edges. Just hold down your control button as you're selecting your edges and then select your fillet tool. If I forget to hold down the control button, select the edges, just go right into your box and select the select tool, which allows me to go in and continue to select those edges for that fillet. Noticing when I'm selecting these edges, I have that arrow there. When I push and pull it, it actually snaps to different dimensions. We'll take a look at in a minute here how we can change what that snaps to. Just like what I did with the fillet, I can actually select an edge and do a chamfer as well. Use the same technology there by grabbing the arrow and dragging, typing the number, and clicking that arrow. Now if I want to change at any time a fillet or anything like that, I can actually just select the feature and a glyph appears, which allows me to reopen that tool. Just like the fillet, I can do the same thing for a hole. Selecting the hole, a glyph appears, that tool pops open again. Now, I had mentioned that I have the capability of changing what that is being dragged to at the snapping rate. So if I go into my document settings, modeling tab, you can see there the 3D snap. That's where I can change that dimension of what the snap is actually going to.